What's going on, guys? We're looking at a pretty good day in the market, a good day for Bitcoin. Started off a little red, but starting to move into the green. Same with the Bitcoin miners. Now in this video, we're going to talk about spot Bitcoin ETF inflows. We had another fantastic day yesterday. We're going to talk about some interesting news with crypto.com and a potential spot ETF for Kronos. We're going to talk about the new SEC chair that was recently sworn in. And then we'll take a look at two of my favorite Bitcoin miners on the chart. But first off, let's talk about... What? That was kind of weird. But first off, let's talk about who is behind this recent price spike. Who's been buying? And one of the first things this article talks about is Coinbase Pro. When we see a premium there, that's typically a sign that institutionals have been buying. Coinbase Pro caters predominantly to institutional investors. And while the first half of April showed strong retail dominance, April 21 and 22 saw institutional demand spike. Also, this has nothing to do with who's buying Bitcoin, institutional or retail, but this is an interesting tidbit that for some reason is in here. Rex Capital also points out this descending trend that we finally broke out of. And I quote, "The multi-month downtrend is over, and when a technical downtrend is broken, technical uptrends emerge." This is something that many market participants, including us, have been watching for quite a while now, and we finally did get that break. And as it stands, Bitcoin is now above the 50 and the 200 MA. Soon after, if we can keep this, comes the golden cross. Alright, next let's talk about this Crow news. TMTG, or Trump Media and Technology Group, has sealed a deal with crypto.com and Yorkville America Digital in an effort to launch a lineup of ETFs involving Crow, involving Bitcoin. And we did hear something about this last month. Trump Media revealed that it signed a non-binding agreement to crypto.com. Collaboration. Launching a Crow spot ETF is part of crypto.com's roadmap. However, this should start later in this year. They plan to submit an application for the product in the fourth quarter of 2025, meaning that approval may come sometime in 2026. But I'll leave this article down below for you guys. It also talks about Charles Schwab. They're involved in this as well. And they too plan to launch crypto spot trading in the next 12 months. Now, as we talked about, Monday was a fantastic day for spot ETFs. The same with Tuesday. On April 22, we saw $912 million worth of cumulative net inflows, which is one of their best days in more than 3 months since January 21. This article also mentions that Bitcoin has now passed Google. Bitcoin is now the 5th largest asset. Where do you guys think Bitcoin ends up this cycle? Do we have a shot at passing Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, gold? Nah. But do you think Bitcoin will pass one of these three, all of these three? Let me know in the comments below. We also have our newly appointed SEC chair, and Michael Saylor is very pleased with this news. And here's a little tidbit from Vincent Liu, Chief Investment Officer at crypto investment firm Kronos Research. Under Chair Atkins, finalizing custody rules for digital assets is expected to provide the investor protections that institutions demand. Other issues that should be resolved, and this is big, clarification on whether some digital assets are securities or commodities. This has been a long-standing debate. Of course, you have the CFTC arguing that these cryptos are mostly commodities so that they can have control. And then you have the SEC saying that they are securities. Look into what CFTC and SEC stands for if you don't know, and it makes it pretty blatantly obvious. They are fighting for power, or at least they have been in recent time. Most people are happy with this choice of the SEC chair, however, not Elizabeth Warren, which to me is a great sign. Now, I do want to remind you guys that tomorrow, Thursday, we do have an updated GDP now from the Atlanta Fed. It's been projected to be negative. It went a little bit better. We need to see more improvement, but even then, it'll likely be a negative quarter for GDP, at least according to the Atlanta Fed. And we will likely see if there's any changes from the blue chip consensus, the top 10 and bottom 10 average forecasts, which have been kind of going to the negative. So keep an eye on the Atlanta Fed projected GDP. It might move the market a bit tomorrow. All right, now looking at Bitcoin, we reclaim the 50 MA, we reclaim the 200 MA. The 50 MA is pointing up for the first time since mid-January, which is a great sign. If we can keep our momentum, or dare I say, even trade sideways here, in between this roughly 91 and 94.5, if we don't break this, it's okay. We can just trade sideways and we will eventually get this golden cross. But I do think we have a chance to break if we can break this level. Next, we're heading for just a hair under 100K. Now, I wanted to bring up the weekly, and I'm curious if we're going to play out kind of a cup and handle. Here's the cup. Are we going to pull back, retrace down to this 91 area, and then break back up? Get our breakout? Very possible. I do want to show you on the 1 hour that we do have a bearish divergence. The price was hitting higher highs here. However, the RSI was already starting to cool off. So keep an eye on these. They're more important on larger term time frames, 4 hour, daily. But this is a sign that we may head lower, retest this 91 area, which is perfectly fine. Now I do want to talk about the Bitcoin miners. We've been seeing some improvement. However, technicals are still ugly. Most are still well under the 200 and the 50 MA, not in CleanSpark's case. CleanSpark is now over the 50 MA. They are both pointing down. They are both in the bearish order. One thing that's a positive that we did finally see is a break of this descending wedge, while we also had a bullish divergence here towards the bottom. Lower low, higher low, bullish divergence. I think the Bitcoin miners are going to be somewhat range bound as we get up to earnings. There's going to be a little uncertainty. For some, the last quarter was profitable, like in CleanSpark's case, but a lot of that also had to do with Bitcoin's price performance and the FASB accounting rule change. And throughout Q1, Bitcoin's performance wasn't as good. Very close to being basically flat from the beginning of January to the end of this quarter. So they don't have Bitcoin's price performance to give them some unrealized gains. So we should see some growth in revenue. The negative is we'll likely see a loss for the quarter. Bitcoin's price didn't perform all that well in Q1. Hopefully Q2 starts a change. Now I also want to bring up IREN. This is another of my favorite Bitcoin miners. A bit more bearish than CleanSpark. It is not over the 50 or the 200 MA yet. They are both pointing down as well. But we did get a nice reaction on a break of this descending wedge. Next, we're going to want to take out these lower highs, the 680 area, the 750 area. Those are going to be two zones to watch out for. We might find resistance there, or we might try to crush through them. Now, here's something interesting. IREN is actually anticipating a profit. And we do know that IREN is the most efficient Bitcoin miner in the game. Their joules per terahash makes companies like Riot and Mara look like a joke. I have high hopes for both IREN and CleanSpark. They are the most efficient Bitcoin miners in the game, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But the truth is, these Bitcoin miners, for the most part, have very bearish charts, and we need more uptrend from Bitcoin before they start looking more bullish. But how do you guys feel about the Bitcoin miners lately? Are you feeling some restored optimism? Do you think this is a dead cat bounce? Do you think Bitcoin's bounce is a dead cat bounce? Or do you think Bitcoin is starting to live up to its potential as a scarce asset, as a hedge against inflation, as a hedge against a potential recession, economic woes? And also, what do you think will come of the new SEC chair? Do we see some favorable regulation, or does he become another Gary Gensler? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.